The Dwemer, masters of science, magic and industry, were a race unmatched in ambition and intellect. Their works spanned the width of Tamriel, their machines grinding ever forward, relentless and unyielding. And yet, in the blink of an eye, they were no more. A people who dared to defy the natural order, erased without a trace, leaving behind only ruins, automata, and questions that have haunted scholars and scavengers alike for millennia. What arrogance must it have taken for Khagrenac and his kind to tamper with the divine? They were not content to thrive, to live as mortal kings. No, they sought to transcend mortality itself, to shatter the barriers of existence through the heart of Lorkhan, the fragment of a god itself. "I will instill the heart's power into us all," Khagrenac is said to have claimed, a claim so bold, so reckless, that it bordered on madness. What followed was not apotheosis, but annihilation. Or so many believe. The Dwemer's reckless obsession with the heart of Lorkhan stands as their most damning folly. Khagrenac, their so-called tonal architect, thought himself a god in waiting, wielding tools like keening, sunder, and wraithguard as if he could command Nirn's very essence. Their arrogance knew no bounds. They dared to harness a divine artifact, the fragmented heart of a dead god no less, all in the name of achieving immortality. What hubris! The gods themselves must have laughed at their presumption. It is said that during the Battle of Red Mountain, Khagrenac struck the heart with his accursed tools, aiming to bind its power to the Dwemer. But instead of elevating their race to godhood, they vanished in an instant, as if snuffed out like a candle's flame. Every Dwemer, from the youngest child to the most battle-hardened centurion commander, disappeared without a trace. Their precious heart backfired, obliterating them, or perhaps it consumed them. Some argue they ascended to a higher plane, though such talk reeks of apologist nonsense. Ascension? Ha! More likely, their arrogance cost them their very existence. They did not transcend, they perished. Khagrenac's ambition was nothing more than a fool's gamble, and the Dwemer paid the ultimate price. Even today, the tools and remnants of their madness are sought by fools who fancy themselves worthy of wielding them. The tribunal of Morrowind meddled with the heart, and look where that led them. Divine power corrupted and squandered, leaving their nation to crumble. Have we learned nothing from the Dwemer's failure? Perhaps their disappearance was a mercy, a cautionary tale against mortals who dare to tread too close to the divine. What's more, the Dwemer, in their insatiable arrogance, were no strangers to reckless experimentation. Their mastery of tonal architecture, a discipline beyond mortal comprehension, was their crowning achievement, a tool to reshape reality itself. These so-called geniuses wielded tonal vibrations like hammers on the fabric of existence, bending the natural order to their will. Yet, as with all who play the god, their hubris became their undoing. It is said they sought to perfect tonal harmonics on an unfathomable scale, tuning the essence of Nirn itself as one might tune a lute. To the Dwemer, nothing was sacred, not even the boundaries between worlds. Some claim that their experiments culminated in a catastrophic resonance, a vibration so immense it unraveled their very presence from the mortal plane. Picture this, an entire race erased, not by swords or flames, but by their own infernal machines. Their cities didn't crumble, they simply fell silent, abandoned by those who had engineered their own demise. The ruins that remain, those towering brass towers, the intricate gears that still churn without purpose, are proof of their folly. The Dwemer sought dominion over forces they barely understood, and their tonal experiments may have set off a chain reaction that consumed them entirely. What hubris, what madness, to tamper with the laws of existence itself and expect no consequence. Their machines hum still, not in triumph, but as hollow testaments to their failure. The fools might have thought themselves untouchable, their science impervious to error. Perhaps they even believed they would return. ascendant, eternal. But the silence of their halls and the rusting remnants of their ambition suggest otherwise. If they were consumed by their tonal experiments, then let them serve as a warning. Those who seek to dominate reality will always find themselves crushed beneath the weight of their own creation. The gods themselves, those sanctimonious meddlers, may well have been responsible for the eradication of the Dwemer. For what are they, if not jealous overseers, eager to punish any who dare to grasp at their dominion? The Dwemer, with their unrivaled ingenuity, sought to harness the heart of Lorcan, a fragment of divinity buried in the mortal plane. But such ambitions, noble though they may seem to those of us unshackled by divine propaganda, could not be tolerated. The divines, with their gilded thrones in Aetherius, are said to have exacted swift and terrible vengeance. Whether it was Stendar, self-proclaimed arbiter of justice, or Akatosh, lord of time itself, one of these cosmic tyrants may have obliterated the Dwemer in an act of petulant retaliation. How dare a mortal race dare to manipulate the very source of a god's power? How dare they challenge the celestial order? To the divines it was heresy, to the Dwemer it was progress, and yet others whisper of Daedric involvement. The Dwemer's cold pragmatism and disdain for worship may have made them enemies of the princes. Could Mehrunes Dagon, the architect of chaos, have snuffed them out in a blaze of apocalyptic fury? Or was it Hermaeus Mora, hoarder of forbidden knowledge, punishing them for trespassing too far into his realm of secrets? The Dwemer's disappearance reeks of divine interference. Petty, insecure gods erasing what they could not control. But the gods, for all their power, are not infallible. The ruins of Blackreach and the ghost fires of their machines remain, silent witnesses to the Dwemer's greatness. If the gods sought to erase their legacy, they failed miserably. What if the Dwemer's disappearance wasn't a failure, but a triumph? A deliberate act, their final stroke of brilliance? Some believe the Dwemer used their mastery of tonal architecture to escape the constraints of Nirn entirely. These weren't mere tinkerers, they were visionaries, unshackled by the primitive fears and limitations that bind the rest of us. Their technology surpassed even the wildest dreams of their contemporaries. Is it so absurd to think they succeeded in leaving us behind? Consider the evidence. The Numidium. This brass colossus was not simply a weapon of war, but a tool of unimaginable power. It wasn't built to conquer, it was built to transcend. The Dwemer's experiments with tonal manipulation may have opened a gateway to another plane, a higher realm, where they could thrive without interference from the gods they so openly scorned. Unlike the pitiful Aelids or the fumbling Chimera, the Dwemer didn't grovel before Daedra or divines. They bent the world to their will. It's entirely possible they saw Nirn for what it is, a prison planet, and they found a way out. Of course, this theory assumes they acted as one, that they all agreed to take the leap. But would every Dwemer truly embrace such a gamble? And if they did escape, where are the traces of their departure? Perhaps the act of crossing over erased them from our plane so completely that even their shadows were swallowed by the void. Or perhaps, as some whisper, their relocation was incomplete. An experiment interrupted, leaving only ruins and machines to tell their tale. And let us not forget the arrogance of it all, to leave their creations behind, their automata mindlessly wandering the ruins, their technology still humming with power centuries later. What kind of race abandons its own legacy so easily? Maybe they thought they were too grand for Nirn, or maybe their hubris followed them into that new realm, and they found it was no paradise after all. Not all Dwemer stood united under Kagranak's vision. Beneath the brass halls of their cities, cracks had begun to form, not in their architecture, but in their society. Disputes over the heart of Lorcan's use reached a boiling point, creating factions within their ranks. The arrogance of their so-called enlightenment had blinded them to one simple truth. Ambition breeds betrayal. While Kagrenac and his followers sought to manipulate the heart's divine power, dissenters whispered of disaster. Among them, Yagrum Bagan, the last known Dwemer, implied that not all agreed with Kagrenac's reckless experimentation. These dissenters understood the dangers of tampering with divinity and reportedly worked in secret to undermine the tonal experiments. What better way to halt a madman than to sabotage his tools? Imagine the tension in the great Dwemer councils as one faction hurled accusations against another. Prideful, calculating minds refused compromise, each side convinced of their superiority. When Kagrenac's tools struck the heart, could their failure have been the result of deliberate sabotage? A brilliant stroke of betrayal aimed not only at Kagrenac's ambitions, but at the entire Dwemer people. The disappearance of the Dwemer remains one of Tamriel's greatest mysteries, but if you ask me, it's not some grand cosmic tragedy or divine intervention. No, it's simpler and far darker than that. The Dwemer, like every other Mer, were bound by their nature, treachery. If anything, their vanishing was probably the result of betrayal, internal conflict, or outright sabotage. The Mer are no strangers to such acts, especially when power is at stake. Kagrenac may have been the one to pull the trigger, but he didn't do it alone. The Dwemer, despite their brilliance, couldn't avoid their flaws. As always, their pride led them to aim for something they couldn't control. And when that happens, someone always gets hurt. Their obsession with the heart of Lorcan wasn't just about defying the gods. It was about claiming what was never theirs to take. You think Kagrenac was the only one involved? You think the other great minds among the Dwemer sat idly by as he carried out his reckless experiments? No, I bet you there was a faction within their ranks who saw what he was doing as a threat. If Kagrenac didn't meet his end from his own experiment, then it's likely someone else made sure of it. Maybe they saw it as the only way to stop him, or maybe they had ambitions of their own. Either way, the Dwemer fell victim to their own kind, and that's the truth of it. The gods didn't need to curse them. No, the Dwemer had already cursed themselves.